Hello and welcome to Firstpost Spotlight, where we bring you stories that matter to you from all across the world. From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, we shed light on issues that shape our world. I'm Alison Lagrange, live from Durban, South Africa. Let's begin with the top headlines. Russian President Vladimir Putin visits Kursk region for the first time since Moscow's forces ejected Ukrainian troops from the area last month. French President Emmanuel Macron's party supports banning the hijab in public places for girls under 15 amid the government's review of a key report on the rise of political Islamism. Tanzania shuts down social media platform X in the country after a compromised account of the Tanzanian police falsely announced the president's death. Indian writer Banu Mushtaq wins International Booker Prize for her short story anthology Heartlamp, becoming the first Kannada language author to win the coveted honour. And health authorities in England announced the rollout of a world-first vaccine program for gonorrhea amid record levels of the sexually transmitted disease. Hello and welcome. We begin with the latest from the Indian subcontinent. An explosion in a school bus in Balochistan killed at least 5 people and left dozens injured. The bus, which belonged to an army public school, was carrying around 40 children when an explosion occurred. Police confirmed that 3 of the 5 dead were children. Pictures circulating on social media showed charred wreckage of a large bus with backpacks scattered around the site. The deadly blast occurred at 7:40 a.m. local time near the remote town of Hozdar, not far from the border of Pakistan's Sindh province. So far, no group has claimed responsibility for the attack, but the Balochistan region continues to be in the middle of a long-standing insurgency against the Pakistani state. Pakistan's Interior Minister condemned the attack as sheer barbarism, calling the attackers beasts who target children. The minister called it an attempt to destabilize Pakistan. Beasts who target children. The minister called it an attempt to destabilize Pakistan. This is only the latest of a series of such attacks in Balochistan region, where Baloch insurgents have targeted members of Pakistani military. Earlier in March, scores of Pakistani military personnel were killed in a train siege by Baloch insurgents in Balochistan's Sindh district. The Baloch Liberation Army, the group which took responsibility for the March incident, recently released a detailed video documenting the unprecedented train siege. Meanwhile, Baloch activists continue to highlight alleged atrocities committed by Pakistan's security forces, including widespread abductions, illegal detentions, and torture of nationalists. According to data presented in the European Parliament in January last year, more than 2,700 people have disappeared in Balochistan since 2011. Many of them were found dead years later. The devastating bombing in Balochistan serves as a sharp reminder of the prevailing security crisis in the region. With Baloch insurgents targeting Pakistani military, has the situation in the region reached a tipping point? Moving on, global terrorist Hafiz Saeed's closest ally and co-founder of the Lashkar-e-Taiba, Amir Hamza, was reportedly hospitalized. not in a regular civilian facility, but in a Pakistani military hospital in Lahore, under heavy security provided by Pakistan's intelligence agency, the ISI. Reports say Amir Hamza, the 66-year-old senior Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorist, is in critical condition. The exact circumstances remain unknown. On the 20th of May, he was rushed to the military hospital with full ISI security cover, a privilege Islamabad is now openly extending to the listed global terrorists. Known to be an extremist religious preacher, Hamza is a close aide of Lashkar-e-Taiba top terrorist Hafiz Saeed. A veteran of the Soviet-Afghan War, Hamza played a key role in recruiting anti-Soviet militants through his networks across Iran and present-day Central Asian republics. He edited several Lashkar propaganda publications and was a central figure in radicalizing youth through extremist ideology. The 66-year-old is also linked to the 2005 terror attack in India's Bengaluru city. Known for his fiery sermons, Hamza is credited with shaping Lashkar-e-Taiba's early growth in the 2000s. Scholars say Hamza's writings label non-Muslims, both within and outside Pakistan, as, and I quote, legitimate targets of jihad. Hamza was designated a global terrorist in 2012 by the US Treasury Department. But despite that, he made frequent appearances in Pakistani seminaries, with fiery speeches asking young terror recruits to wage jihad. The past few days have seen the state of Pakistan come out in brazen support of global terrorists. This includes state funeral for the terrorists killed in India's Operation Sindh in the presence of Pakistani military personnel. Furthermore, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif also announced 10 million Pakistani rupees as compensation for each terrorist killed in the Indian missile strikes. And now a certified terror ideologue listed as a global terrorist has been hospitalized in a Pakistani military hospital. That too with Pakistan ISI's security cover. Even for the sake of its once prized political correctness, Pakistan is no longer pretending to hide its support for terror. It's wearing it as a badge of honor. And now let us shift our focus to West Asia, a region embroiled in escalating tensions. A new intelligence obtained by the United States reportedly suggests that Israel is preparing for a possible strike on Iranian nuclear facilities, a move that could risk igniting a broader conflict across the region. US officials have reportedly said that Washington has intercepted Israeli communications and observed military activity, including the movement of air munitions and the completion of an air exercise that has raised significant concerns in the Trump administration. While no final decision on a possible strike on Iran has been made yet, US officials allegedly say the likelihood of an Israeli strike has risen in recent months, particularly if a Trump-negotiated deal fails to remove Iran's uranium stockpile. Now, the report about US intelligence has already had a global impact, with oil prices jumping over 1% amid fears of a potential supply disruption in West Asia. And this isn't the first warning. A US intelligence assessment from February had already cautioned that Israel could attempt a strike this year using long-range missiles or aircraft to exploit Iran's degraded air defenses. But even with such tactics, US officials reportedly believe Israel lacks the capability to destroy Iran's nuclear program without US military support. Yet Tel Aviv has allegedly signaled it may act alone if Washington strikes a deal Israel deems unacceptable. And right now, those talks remain deadlocked, with Washington insisting that Tehran must not enrich uranium, a process that can enable weaponization, but is also essential for civilian nuclear power. And according to the International Atomic Energy Agency, Iran now holds nearly 275 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60%, close to the 90% purity level considered weapons grade. Experts say that could be enough if further enriched for up to 6 nuclear bombs. Tehran maintains its nuclear program is peaceful and reportedly says it will never seek nuclear weapons. But Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, who is leading the US delegation, said over the weekend that Washington could not allow Iran to have even 1% of an enrichment capability under an agreement.
We have one very, very clear red line, and that is enrichment. We cannot allow even 1% of an enrichment capability. We've delivered a proposal to the Iranians that we think addresses some of this without disrespecting them.
Despite the US submitting the proposal, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei cast doubt on the negotiations on Tuesday.
Indirect negotiations existed back then, in Raisi's time too. But there were no results, and I don't think we'll bring results now. Who knows? We will not allow Iran to enrich uranium. Is a major overstep. No one is waiting for permission.
For now, the next round of talks are expected to take place in Europe this week. But with Israel signaling readiness to strike and Tehran openly defying demands on uranium enrichment, the stakes are rising and the window for diplomacy may be closing faster than expected. And for our last story today, let's turn our attention to the war in Ukraine, where a new potential avenue for peace talks is emerging. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has backed US President Donald Trump's suggestion that the Vatican could mediate talks on negotiating a ceasefire in Ukraine. This development follows comments from Pope Leo last week. The Pope affirmed the Vatican's constant readiness to bring opposing sides together and its commitment to making every effort for peace. Despite this, the Holy See itself has clarified that the idea of hosting or even mediating talks remains more of a hopeful aspiration than a concrete plan at this stage.
Thank you.
If direct engagement does resume, Ukraine appears open to the Vatican as a potential host. President Volodymyr Zelensky took to social media platform X on Tuesday to reveal that he had discussed possible platforms for talks with the Russians, with Prime Minister Meloni. He noted her cool ideas, while also mentioning Turkey and Switzerland as alternative venues for talks. Looking at the current status of the ceasefire negotiations, the two sides haven't made any significant progress. Last week's meeting between Russian and Ukrainian officials in Istanbul has brought additional demands from Moscow. Beyond the initial terms, which were unfavorable to Kiev, Moscow now insists on Kiev recognizing its annexation of 4 partially occupied regions of Ukraine, as well as Crimea. Experts suggest that the Vatican's potential involvement in the peace talks could possibly lend some extra moral authority into the push for some form of compromise. The Catholic Church has a history of mediating conflicts and has already been involved in efforts to secure prisoner releases and the return of Ukrainian children, although the extent of its direct impact remains somewhat unclear. The Vatican's diplomatic style, known for its quiet and considered approach, stands in stark contrast to Donald Trump's often blunt public pronouncements. A recent encounter between Trump and Zelensky at Pope Francis's funeral, where they were seen in close conversation, hinted at a possible thawing of their relationship. However, unlike Pope Francis, the current Pope Leo has publicly condemned Russia's invasion as an imperialist war and has denounced the crimes committed by the Russian forces. Experts suggest that the question of whether the Vatican can effectively facilitate meaningful peace talks hinges on factors far deeper than the choice of venue or the style of negotiations. It depends on a fundamental shift in the positions and priorities of both Russia and Ukraine, and the willingness of international actors to exert pressure toward a resolution. And that's all we have on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to First Post.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT.